My boys, Morocco. They are cooking right now. Kate is with us, Kweku as well. Not just me on my own today. But I do want to chat about Morocco because I backed them, and everyone loves saying I told you so in this job. They were sensational against Spain. I know Rodri said a few things about Morocco apparently not actually creating too much, and Spain dominated the ball. But it did feel like Morocco actually played very well. Spain didn't play very well at all.
Yeah, completely. And just to get it on the record, I did also think Morocco would beat Spain, so don't worry about it. But yeah, I think the key to that was that they did make chances, and we'll come on to those, but they've had the defensive solidity has been incredible. I mean, if you look at their back line, it's made up of some real quality players we'll recognise who play in Europe, of course. Ashraf Hakimi, PSG, Naif Agard, at West Ham, Roman Sace, Besiktas. These dudes have been doing the work, but let's not forget their keeper. Oh my goodness me. Yeah. You cannot expect keeping a clean sheet in a penalty shootout. Unreal. Come on, Bono. Yeah. That was unbelievable.
And he's one of my favourite players in this competition. He's got real character. He's got that. You need, especially if you're going to go on a deep run in a major tournament, you need players that have got a bit of bite about them, a bit of character. And you knew when they stepped up for the penalty shootout that he was going to save at least one or two of them. And he's a big reason why they're into the quarterfinals.
Also, Sofiane Amrabat in front of that back line, he was linked to, I want to say, Wolves, Southampton, Liverpool, all sorts of teams in the previous transfer window. Now, of course, everyone is going to be linked to him because he's having a monster tournament. He said before the game that he felt some aches and pains. He just took a few injections and he was like, I am playing through this. They're going to need a few more injections because Romain Saez and Naif Agard both came off looking like they were both injured. Changing both your centre-backs when you've kept this many clean sheets, only conceded one goal, that was against Canada. They obviously play in such a way that it requires them to be defensively solid. They can't just change both centre-backs and start playing open, expansive football. Where does that leave them now?
You're hoping that the players will be fit because you never want to see a team like Morocco, who have made it to their first quarterfinals ever in the World Cup, be short-handed in a game where they're going to need every single one of their players. And not you touched on Amrabat, he covered every blade of grass. He was probably their man of the match, and a huge reason why they can relinquish 77% of possession because they don't give up chances. There's a great shield in front of that back four that you've gone through there, and they've got really top quality players. And I think people underestimated Morocco going into this World Cup. But if you look at the group they are in against Croatia, against Belgium, they've got marquee results, and they've got the win they needed against Canada. They've been one of the teams of the tournament, so I expect them to give Portugal a difficult game going into the quarterfinals. But you do have to pick Portugal as favourites in that one.
Do you not think it's kind of incredible as well to see that they had the head coach took over only in August? Walid Regragui, you would have thought at that stage that smacks of desperation, right? You're going to change your head coach with 3 months to go before the World Cup. How are you supposed to get your team, who are clearly not matching together, not gelling? How are you going to make that happen within 3 months? And the fact that when they've been playing, they've looked like such an incredible unit every single time. And in fact, I think that's basically been the crux of it, the kind of mentality that they've had as a team. To have done that in 3 months, talk about being in demand.
Yeah, well, I mean, on the flip side, you have Luis Enrique, who's sort of overcoached that Spain team a little bit, I think. It started with Marcos Llorente right back then. This Rodri Laporte thing, I was never sure about that centre-back. I feel like he's put Rodri in there to be sort of like the powerhouse centre-back because he's good in the air, but when it comes to tournament football, Morocco kind of said, you just keep the ball, we'll sacrifice possession, and then we'll pinch the chance. They could have actually won the game with a chance at the end.
So that's why that Rodri thing is just a load of
it's snobbery. It's like European football snobbery because that's the way that Morocco played and it's been so effective. And you're right to bring up the coach because he's the first African coach to make it to quarterfinals. And like I say, he's going to be in such high demand. And the big thing that he did do is bringing Hakim Ziyech into the fold.
Yes.
I'm a Chelsea fan for my sins, and I've seen Ziyech over the last couple of years not play to the levels that we saw him at Ajax, especially in the Champions League. But the fact that he was on an exile, he fell out of the former coach Vahid Hilahodzic, and the fact that the new head coach Regragui is about to bring him back into the fold, ingratiate him in the team, and you see Hakim Ziyech now tracking. You see him now combating for headers. You're seeing a completely different player to what you've seen at Chelsea and Stamford Bridge for the last 24 months. And the head coach deserves massive credit for that. You can see that the players are really playing for him.
Do you think that thing about overcoaching as well has really been intensified on the Spain side because of that thing about 1,000? They've each taken 1,000 penalties. It doesn't smack of confidence, actually. I kind of like it as an idea because the point is you can control penalties. Why do people not work on them more? But the idea of them all banging in 1,000 penalties, it just
It was one of those things where, like, when Sarabia stepped up to take it, I was
he
like,
shouldn't have. He shouldn't have. By the way, because obviously he just
hit
the
post.
Yeah.
They brought him on to take a penalty. It's sort of like written that he wouldn't score the penalty. I think if Spain score the first one, then he might actually go on to score later on. But one of those things with Luis Enrique is that he's so tactically versatile, but during this tournament he's actually done the opposite, where he's like almost like stuck with the false nine, which hasn't worked. It only works against Costa Rica. Morata's been dangerous off the bench.
my guys.
Yeah, sorry, I apologise.
Watch your tongue. Those are my guys.
But when you watched them after the Costa Rica game, you did feel, how many more goals is Dani Olmo going to score? How many more goals is Ferran Torres going to score? I think we were sat here and we were saying it almost felt like they used up their games in that one game. Used up their goals, in that one game. There's also been a lot of talk about Sergio Ramos. Do you feel like Luis Enrique owes him an apology?
Yeah, he does. He definitely does. I mean, the fact that he's sitting at home watching them having to play people out of position when you have got one of the most decorated centre-backs in the world in your potential squads. Like, I'm all about being able to mix youth and experience. And, of course, people have got to earn their place in the squad. But it just looks like he's been proved completely wrong.
And he's been very vocal as well, Luis Enrique. It's not like he's gone under the radar this tournament. Obviously, we know about his Twitch that he set up, and he said you have to believe you're the best coach in the world. So he's not necessarily helped himself. He's piled a lot of pressure. I'm not here to decry him as a coach. He's an incredible manager, an incredible coach, and he's done great things in football. But he's got it wrong. It almost felt like Spain stumbled across something with Morata, and the fact that he didn't start. Again, I'm a Chelsea fan. I've seen Morata have really, really poor games for my club. But when you see him not starting in the last 16 of a World Cup match, then it kind of raised alarm bells. And despite the fact that Spain dominated possession, they didn't show enough to win the game. And I feel like back in Spain, there's going to be a lot of pressure piled on Luis Enrique.
From one striker to another, Cristiano Ronaldo didn't play.
What a segue, mate.
What
a segue. Are we going to talk about Ronaldo now? Yeah, all right then.
It's absolutely necessary. Ramos' replacement was unbelievable. 3 goals. That first goal was absolutely outrageous. But Ronaldo, very quickly, is this too easy to say they were just better without him?
No, that is what it is. They are better without him, and people have been calling that before the tournament started. Sorry, I don't want to just bore you here, but let's go through the last 4 weeks for Cristiano Ronaldo in terms of a disaster class in PR. You sit down and you do an interview with Piers Morgan, and you basically call out everybody at your football club. You call out the manager, you call out the players, you call out the hierarchy. And then you go to the World Cup, you expect a little bit of respite from international football, and then you have that frosty reception with Bruno Fernandes, try and play it down, nothing really happens. Fair enough. You dive against Ghana, that is a dive. To this day, I'm still saying it's a dive.
I took that personally.
And he scored a penalty. And then against Uruguay, you try and claim that you scored the goal, which was actually Bruno Fernandes' goal.
I actually don't mind that too much.
Yeah, same.
Striking, we've seen Harry Kane do it.
I get it, but it looks embarrassing in the circumstances,
in the context of what you're explaining,
what he's done. And then you feel like your head coach, who's backed you ostensibly over the last 4 years, like he allowed you to be the phone manager in the final of Euro 2016 and stand alongside him and direct, and you've managed to fall out of him. You get benched, and then the player that comes in for you scores a hat trick. I've never seen 4 weeks like it in the history of sport for a superstar, and he's going out like Game of Thrones, really. Like the first few chapters of your story were incredible. You gave us highs that we've never seen before, but the final chapter is going to leave a bit of taste in the mouth and also affect how people view your legacy going forward.
But that is exactly how it was always going to end, I think. I know it's easy to be wise after the event, but that is sort of the player that he is and the way that he is expected to behave. You talk about him managing his side effectively. It's hard. It's been hard for anybody to realise that they're losing a yard of pace, that they're not the player they were, especially when he's someone who's defied his age for so long. He actually has. If you think, you see all that stuff about body fat, like his percentages are the most absurd you've ever seen. But it's over.
It is over.
Here's a question. For everything you've just said, which I somewhat agree with, there are still certain things where, say, certain pages were posting about Ronaldo not celebrating when actually he did celebrate. Yeah. Saw the footage after. I do feel like lots of it is being dramatised.
Yeah,
the manager after has sort of said, look, we haven't really fallen out, but we're so under the impression that whoever Ronaldo talks to, he's falling out with. Are we being a little bit harsh on Ronaldo?
Yeah, of course. In that sense, people are being harsh. And as people have pointed out, not enough probably, but this is someone who's lost a child in recent weeks. So this guy is like, we don't know what he's... And even just being under that level of pressure and fame and adulation, just the idea that I don't know where you could go in the world where people wouldn't know you were Cristiano Ronaldo. I don't know if there is anywhere.
There isn't, and he's one of the most famous people in the entire world. And get it. It has been dramatised online, and people have taken clippings of him not celebrating when we actually saw, when you watched the game, that he was celebrating with his
The
teammates.
meme's got a meme, man.
Yeah, memes have got a meme. But this is the guy who creates the drama. This is the guy who invites the drama. This is the guy who, we talked about it before, invites it because it almost fuels him in terms of playing under that pressure and proving people wrong. And this is a guy who sues every time he scores and has a whole stadium doing a celebration. He loves the drama. So I get it in terms of, I do feel sorry for him because he's growing old disgracefully, and it's not ending the way that he wants it to end. But this is the guy who's invited most of this onto his own shoulders.
And also, partly, that fighting is what's made him be the player that he is. You couldn't have early stage Ronaldo, I don't think, without late stage Ronaldo.
Yeah. All right, well, people want to talk about Ronaldo, so we kind of have to do it, you know. I still do feel he's got a part to play in this tournament.
Yeah,
I still think
super
there will
sub.
be a moment that,
Humble super sub.
Yeah,
It'll be
I don't know
perfect for
about
him.
the first part. The first part might not happen.
Humble superstar. Well, he probably will have a part to play in this tournament because it's Cristiano Ronaldo. The script is it's not finished. There is still
He writes his own.
He writes his
Something
own
will
scripts, and
happen.
like you said when you talked to Piers Morgan, like the records follow him. There's surely something else that's going to happen. But I do think that we have reached a point that we've seen Cristiano Ronaldo start a top level game or top class game for the last time in his career, because there's rumours of him going to the Middle East to play his club football. I don't think he's going to start again for Portugal in this tournament. So I do think we have seen Cristiano Ronaldo start a top level game for the last time in his career.
You could also say that the performance of Gonzalo Ramos, I mean, that first goal, did you not love it? Like beating Jan Sommer at his near post. Just like that.
Yeah.
Like, hit it so hard.
Hit
and he
with
went
violence.
through, went through a defender as well.
Yeah.
That was incredible, and you can't really necessarily script that. I mean, if you were trying to write it from the Ronaldo perspective, you'd say he'd been holding the team up so long that these people have been able to develop to a quality where they are so good that they're freshly baked out on the public stage. But anyway, whatever bull you want to say about that. Gonzalo Ramos is an incredible player, and to watch that first hat-trick scored at the World Cup in total, he was just absolutely wicked to watch.
I do have an ever so slight worry.
Oh yeah,
He had a goal contribution every 6.5 touches, which is honestly like unheard of.
because he had hardly any touches.
Yeah, so he had 26 touches in the game, so you kind of go, that worked against Switzerland. I
Right.
don't know if it's going to work
Oh
again.
yeah, we should probably have said Switzerland were terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't
So
great.
I don't know if are we going overboard? I was worried about that.
I feel,
It's a mixture.
yeah, I think like Portugal were decent, like good in moments, but at the same time, I think Switzerland were awful. Switzerland were really bad.
Yeah.
Overall, they scored a goal that they shouldn't have scored. I think Gonzalo Ramos got the assist for that as well, to be fair. Came off his head and it went in. But João Félix certainly looked like the João Félix we've been waiting to see. 2 assists in the game, but he just looked like... There's a little moment where he took on 4 players, and I was like, that's Kaká. No, and he probably doesn't want that tagline, but that was unbelievable. It's going to be a very interesting battle between him and the man Amrabat that we just spoke about, because he sort of lives in that area in between midfield and attack. João Félix also lives in that area, but then they've got Bruno Fernandes and Bernardo Silva. They've got a lot of condiments for whatever they're cooking over there.
Yeah, they have, and that is the key battle. You're right to point that out. João Félix looked like the João Félix that Atletico Madrid signed for all that money those years ago, and he was just picking up those half spaces, and he's great on the turn. And I think Kaká's a great comparison, because when you talk about João Félix, you don't really talk about the physicality, but he showed a burst of pace and some strength that you haven't really seen in his game at club level. He's playing with a level of freedom that I think is allowed due to the fact that Cristiano Ronaldo is not on the pitch demanding the ball at all times. This is not me just piling on Ronaldo.
It's a bit.
I am his biggest apologist, but what I've seen recently is just not acceptable. But back to João Félix, that battle with Amrabat in the midfield is going to decide the game, because we know how defensively resolute Morocco are, and they are going to be happy to let Portugal have the ball and play it around. It's on João Félix to try and unlock those potential opportunities for the Portuguese attackers to get the goals to help them win this game.
To your point about the central defenders possibly being injured, and I don't know where we are on that when this goes out, but that would be the other duel. That would be with Gonzalo Ramos and Ramoses and Ergard. So if they're a bit crocs, then that's a really interesting situation, because Ergard has won 71% of his aerial duels, and Saiss has won 100%. Get out of town. That's ridiculous. Anything that's 100% sounds like it's been...
Yeah, he might have only had one. I don't think he has, but he's definitely had more aerial duels. I think the big detail with that is you've got 2 centre-backs who've played with each other played with each other throughout the tournament. You throw in a new name. The way Morocco play, it's almost like everyone plays with like a net around them, so it's very congested. It's hard to break down, like you touched on with Ziyech. Even Sofiane Boufal puts in a shift, which is why he has to come off after 50 minutes because the man does not like tracking back. That like space that doesn't exist is where Portugal have sort of benefited against Switzerland, and as we saw against Ghana as well. If you sort of get rid of that space, do you think Portugal still have the players that can unlock that type of a game?
If you get rid of the space available to Portugal because you're using a little Moroccan net, is the question.
Yes, that is the question.
That's going to be such an interesting one to see. I think this is why this is going to be such a great game, because if you think about how Portugal have been working on running in behind and some of these spaces that they've unlocked, if you can shut them out of that, that's going to be huge.
Exactly, and it's going to be. It will come down to Cristiano Ronaldo coming off the bench again and bring it back to it because they are going to make it a condensed game. They don't care about having the ball, and you might have to rely on set pieces if you're Portugal. And we know about Ronaldo's exploits in the air. You get the ball in the box, and he is that fox in the box that can finish chances. And we saw Leao come off the bench as well, who's really impressed me. And unfortunately, not to start for this Portugal team. And he got a goal out of nothing really. So they have got strength in depth. Portugal, you almost forget it because everything's all geared towards one man. But they have got a very, very good squad, and I think they're going to have enough to beat this Morocco side in the quarterfinals.
Very quickly, score prediction.
1-0 Portugal.
In 90 minutes.
Yeah, I think so.
Despite the fact that Morocco have been very, very good defensively, I think Portugal are on the roll. I think 3-1 Portugal.
Oh, they've not conceded one goal.
I know, but I just think
we'll come back to
that. Don't save this.
I'm going 0-0 Morocco on pens again.
Okay.
Come on, Morocco!
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.